In this video, we're going to have a look at creating different layouts for the WooCommerce single product page. So on the screen, you can see is the standard installation without any formatting. So let's get stuck in and create some unique layouts. So we'll head into the back end. Here we have our Oxygen templates, and we'll create a new template. And we'll inherit the main for the header and footer. Then we'll go into singular and select products and publish. That published, we'll head over to do an edit. Oxygen is loading. Oxygen has loaded, and let's create our product area. First thing we'll do is add a section. And in that section, we'll head over to WooCommerce, and we'll add a product builder. And there we see the standard layout for products. Head over to the structure panel. There we have our product builder, but we don't want to use the standard layout. So what I'm going to do to start is we are going to go with a 2-column layout. So we'll add the 2 columns. Now you'll see I've added the 2 columns, and in our product builder now, of course, the product builder has been replaced by the 2 columns, and we can now pull in the WooCommerce details. Head over here to WooCommerce, and we'll head over to the first div on the left-hand side, and we'll add the images. So there we have the standard images, and on the right-hand side, we'll add the product title. We'll add the product price. We'll add a product excerpt. And we'll add the add to cart buttons. So there we have a basic layout for our product, and we'll just save that before we go any further. Now we can start editing the different sections. First thing we want to do is change the font weight, and we'll make that a little bit thinner and easier to read. We also want to make the price a little bit bigger. So we'll come here to color typography, font size. Let's make that 30. Let's also make it slightly thinner. Right. The excerpt we have, but we also want to just put some spacing in between the items. So we'll go back to the heading and head size and spacing, and we'll just make a gap there of 20. We'll do the same with the price. We'll do the same with the excerpt. So there we have our products, and what we'd like to do for this example is center the items similar to that. So there we have a basic layout update. We want to take that a little bit further, and what we'd like to do is make the add to basket stand out a little bit more. So what we're going to do is wrap that in a div. So the easiest way to do that is to head over to the item, left click, wrap with a div, and that content item now is in a div. We're going to change the width of the div to 100%, and we're going to introduce some spacing. So we'll make that 15 pixels all around, and we also would like to center that. So we'll head back to center those items, and we'd like to give that a box shadow. We'll make the shadow transparency about 30%. We'll go with a 15, a 15. Let's go with a 0, and then a 15 for the shadow blur. And the last thing we want to do is give the border a radius of 5 pixels. So now when we have a look at our page, we see that we have a nice call to action, which is separated out from the rest of the content on the page, so it pulls in the eye to make the purchase. We might want to just increase the space a little bit more below the excerpt. Head over to size and spacing, and we see that maybe 30 would be more appropriate in this case. Right, so we're happy with that. Let's add the related products. So we'll head back to the product builder tab on the right hand side, and now we can do it by adding a div. So we can wrap the related products, and then over to WooCommerce and scroll down a bit further till we get to other elements for the page, and now we can add in related products. And there we have related products. Right, so let's just do a little bit of styling around the related products as well. So on the div for the related products, we'll go into size and spacing, and we'll give that a spacing of 15 all round. But as you can see, the bottom has a really large amount of space as it is, so we'll make that 0. And what we'll also do is center all the items. You'll see that hitting center on the div didn't center. There we go. It has centered the items. So that's looking good. And what we might want to do now is create a shadow around the products as well. So let's go into advanced, and let's go to size and spacing, and let's make that 15 and the bottom of 0. And what we can then do is go over to effects, box shadow, and we'll apply the same box shadow that we had previously. We'll go back here and we'll go to the border radius, and we'll also give that a border radius of 5. So now we have this layout for the page. So if we want to have a look and see what that looks like on the front end, we can. Just one thing that we notice here, the spacing at the bottom could be a little bit bigger. Right, let's save. And now if we head over to the front end of the website and we refresh, you'll see that the style hasn't taken, and that's because the priority of this template and the standard template is the same. So in order to force this template to take effect, we head over to admin, and we're going to change the template priority there to 2. The higher the number, the greater the priority. And now when I refresh, you'll see that that style gets applied. So there we have the style. But what you'll notice now when you look at the screen is that your eye gets drawn between the two shadowed areas. So your eye is drawn to this space, but it's also drawn to this space, which is uncomfortable for the person viewing the page. So to fix that, let's head over to the template. Now that our template is loaded, just a couple of things that we noticed is that the eye was being drawn by the borders. So it wouldn't, it loses the focus on the add to basket. So to change that, we'll head over to the related products, and we'll go to effects. We'll head over to the box shadow, and we'll just change that number to 15. So what happens now is that the box shadow is not immediately visible. What we also notice now is the difference in spacing between the top and the bottom. So we'll head over here and just make sure that that is the same. Right, so those are now the same. We can save. And now when we refresh the page, you'll see that your eye is no longer pulled to the bottom, but actually rests nicely on the Add to Cart button. Let's have a look and see what happens on a shop that does have some variations to it. Let's have a look at this product with select options. So here we are on the page, and I can then choose an option, and that's working quite nicely. But what we do want to do now is just highlight some of the pricing here, because that price is very small, hard to read, and just make it easier for the user to see what they're paying for. So one of the things that we can do is go in and edit the color of the price. And in this case, we'll just go with a standard red. So we immediately, our eye is drawn to the price, and we also see the add to basket. And if we go and edit this content area now, we can go and have a look at the price. So we have different labels. We might want to make sure that they do conform to at least 16 pixels. So you'll see that that is the label over there. If I make that 20, you'll see that's a little bit bigger. The clear link is the small link that we see at the bottom, and we might want to just make that a little bit bigger so that it's easier to click on and it's not so hidden. And then we have the price amount and color and typography. So once again, we're going to go with the standard red, and the font size we'll go with the 20, just to make it easier to read. So now when we refresh our page, you'll see that the pricing is more visible, and the pricing is also more visible here, so the user can see what they're paying for, but still not great. So let's change that font weight to 500, and let's make that price a little bit bigger, and the line height we can increase. Now when we refresh, we'll see that that price stands out much nicer. So first of all, arriving, there's nothing that we can do. We select the product, and now the price is very clear, and the add to cart button is also very clear. And maybe what we want to do is have a look at that quantity button and make that quantity a little bit bigger. Let's go and have a look at our inputs, typography, and you'll see now that the inputs are a lot larger. Save. And we want to make it really easier for the customer, so the customer arrives, choose an option, nice and clear, choose black, choose blue. The price is nice and clear, and a nice add to cart, very visible. So this is the first in the series, a very nice simple layout. So with that in place, let's head over and create the second layout. Right, the second layout, we're going to create a new template. So we'll head back to the admin, and we'll add a new template, and we're going to call this product single 2, add main for header and footer, and we'll change the priority here to number 3 and publish. One thing we didn't do, select it as the product single and update. Now we'll edit with Oxygen. So here we are on our blank template page, and first thing we're going to do is add the section. Then we're going to add the WooCommerce product builder. And in this example, what we're going to do is have a look at adding a background image to our product page and then adjusting our product information in such a way to make it easier to read. So the first thing that we'll do then is open up our structure panel, and we're going to go with a two-column layout again. So select Product Builder, add basics, 2 columns, and there we have the 2 columns in place under the Product Builder. So to insert the background image in this top section here, quite easy. We select the section, we go to Background, and we select Data, and we're going to go Featured Image. Size, we'll go with large, and Insert. So there we have the image pulling through on our product page, and just to make sure we get the formatting correct, we will ask to cover. We can leave it on scroll, but we'll have a look and see what happens with fixed, and we'll set it to no repeat. So there we have our product image, and let's save that. And now what we're going to do is add the elements for the product page. So on the left hand side in that column, we will add the product images. And on the right hand side, we will add the product title, the product price, product excerpt, the product buttons, and in this case we'll also add the product meta, right. So as you can see, we have the basic layout in place, and now we can start looking at how to improve the user experience. What we'll do for this example is we're also then going to add a second section, which will be inside the product builder. Right, so let's style this to make it easier to read. So the first thing that we'll do is we'll head over to the product images, and we're going to wrap that inside another div. So select, go to the drop-down menu, wrap with div. So now we've wrapped the images in another div, and that will allow us to create some specific styling. So what we'd like to do there now is add a background color of white, and we'll just make sure that the width of that div is always 100%. And we'll head over to borders, and we'll give that a border of 5. So there we have our image contained now in that block, and we'll also give it a box shadow. And the box shadow will move the transparency down to 30%. We'll make that 0, 0, and 15. So we've given our image a nice look and feel. And now what we're going to do is do the same on the text side. So with our text, we're going to wrap the product title with a div. And then we'll move the rest of the elements inside that div. Right, so just carefully move them across. So now they are all contained in that div. And that div now we will also do a little bit of formatting. So the first thing that we'll do is we'll set that to a percentage width, make sure it's on 100. We'll set the background color to white. We'll go into the advanced size and spacing, and we'll give that a padding of 15 all round. And what we'll also do is give that border radius a radius of 5. So it looks something like that. But what we also want to do is make sure that our div fills the full height of this column. So let's do that adjustment. So to do that, we have this div, which is where our content is. We head over to the div before that. We'll change it to a column layout, and we'll say stretch, and that stretches it then down to the bottom of the column. And we'll also make sure that the same applies to the image section, just in case our text exceeds the image, the text exceeds the image size on the left-hand side. And what we can also do is just move some of this around. So let's move that excerpt up. Right, so now we have the layout with the content centered. So that just makes it look a little bit better. And let's change the font weight, make it easier to read. Once again, change the image, the size of the price. Change the font weight, also lower down to make it easier to read. We can once again highlight the color so that your eye is drawn to the price. Then we have the description. So let's set the size and spacing. So we just create a little bit of size and spacing here between the elements. Make it easier to read the different items. And then what we'll do is we'll head over here to the product cart description, and we'll wrap that in a div. And what we'll do is we'll set that to 100%, and we'll center that. And we'll also create a bit of space below it, and we'll save that. Before we save that, we'll add a box shadow. Once again, make that about 30%. No offset. Wrong element. Want to take that off there. And we want to apply the box shadow to the div. So once again, transparency around 30%. Right, let's save. And then let's head over to our website. And that was the previous layout. Now we have a look with the new layout. And you'll see that you can immediately see the difference in how the product information is presented. So the previous look was very clean and white. And with this one, it's a little bit busier with the image in the background. But once again, we have the information popping off the page, making it easy for the customer to see and to read the important product details. So one or two changes that we can make to make this more interesting. We'll head over to the background image on the section, and we're going to make that fixed. And we'll make that sure that the image is centered. So now when the page loads, the image fills the space and is centered. And as you scroll, the background stays the same. What we can do to make it a little bit easier to read on the front end is we can make this slightly transparent, make the image appear slightly transparent, and we could also make it a bit darker. In order to do that, we would maybe drop that down to, let's see, about a 30%. And now we can save. And now when we go and have a look at the front page, you'll see the effect that that has in having the product information pop out right off the page, making it really easy to read. What we can do, though, is also draw attention to the invitation to make the purchase. So let's just have a look at some, once again, at some fonts. So when it comes to the size for the inputs, we make that bigger, which is easier to read. Then we also look at the labels and to make them easier to read as well. So color comes up. If you want to, we could make that a little bit bigger. So color is now the dominant label, but that's a little bit much. Right, then we also have the clear link, which is very small. So we could make that more visible. So easier for the user to clear should they want to. And then we can have a look at the add to cart button. If there's anything there to change, maybe make the font size a little bit bigger. Let's make it easier to read. Right, so what we also want to do is maybe have this spacing pop out a bit. So we could give it a key line or a border, but that will draw your eye to the border line and away from the text. So a better way of doing that would be to change the background color, and we'll make that a very light gray. And we'll also adjust the spacing on the inside. So at the top, we'll give it a slight bit of padding. Let's save. And let's have a look at that on the front end. So now on the front end, you can see you have your ship, your idea. Nice and easy to read. The price is a bit small. And this block is also not standing out maybe as much as it should. So what we can do is come in and first go and look at the price amount. Let's once again go with a red. And let's go with the font size. Let's make that a little bit bigger than previously. And then the block, let's give that a very faint key line. So let's make that one pixel and solid. And now when we go and have a look, you'll see that the product box stands out just a little bit more. So your eye is immediately drawn to the two white blocks. You can look at your images. Here's your product. And then the add to cart once again differentiated and jumps out a bit. And then you have your categories and SKU under the product. Let's make that price a little bit easier to read. So we go and look at the price amount, color and typography, and we change the font weight to 500. And now we know that that font is going to be easier to read. And let's just change the line height. And that will also give it a little bit of extra space. So there we go, much easier to read the pricing. And now what we would like to do is add some other information that belongs with the product. Let's close that. Right, so now we can have a look at adding related products. We have the related products. And we might also want to add the product description, the product tabs. Right, so there we have the column, then we have the product tabs, and then we have the related products. What we'll do is we'll immediately wrap both these elements in a div. And then what we'll do is we can create a class. Let's call that product assets, add the class, and we'll add that same class to the related products. Right, and then we will go ahead and style. So the first thing that we're going to do is give it some padding. Then we're going to give it a background. Make the background white. We're going to make the borders radius 5 pixels. And then we're also going to give it a box shadow. Zero, 0, and the blur 15. And that's going to be on the outside. So there we have the two elements, and we'll put some space between the two. So right, there we go. And under columns, maybe what we'll do, just add a little bit more space. Let's save that. And now when we have a look on the front end, you have a boxed in version with the image in the background. So there we have the images, the add to basket, the description with the reviews, and then below that, the related product. So center aligned at the top, and then as you scroll down, left aligned. And what we can then do on the related products is change that layout to centered, and we can leave it with the 4 columns. I think that looks fine. And maybe make that title a little bit smaller. Save. So there we have our product page with the background image.